Up next on the council's agenda is lobbyist updates with Mr. Gil Romero over Zoom. The chair will recognize Mr. Romero for 30 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of City Council. We are finally past the halfway point in the legislative session. We have 57 days to go. Lots of legislation still to be introduced. A number of bills that we're pretty excited about. Finally, we're going to get to have hearings on. We're excited about the great work that your staff has done on the Proposition 123 housing bill. But we're excited about that. Wanted to let you know that the big thing on our calendar for this week is the March forecast, which will be this Thursday. It'll give us a sort of a sense of where this the state is in terms of revenues, and hopefully, the revenue forecast will be a fairly positive revenue forecast. We're not expecting a lot of changes from January, but we're hoping it'll help in terms of they work through a really difficult $1 billion shortfall this year. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Alex so he can talk to you about 3 of the bills that we're working on. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of council. The first bill I'd like to discuss with you this evening is House Bill 261313. We want to give a special shout out to Melissa Cook, the Director of Housing. She has been instrumental in making sure that this bill landed in the right place that would provide a solution for Pueblo. So we've been working on this bill since earlier this summer and engaging with the sponsor and key stakeholders, and we're glad to see that this is a bill that will positively impact Pueblo. So council may recall that under Proposition 123, local governments must commit to increasing affordable housing in order to access funding from the state's Affordable Housing Fund. And currently, that formula requirement is a 3% increase in affordable housing permits every year over a 3-year cycle. That standard applies statewide, regardless of differences in local housing markets. So this bill changes that beginning in 2027. So instead of requiring every community to meet that same 3% annual increase, the state would have to calculate a housing target based on their local housing permit activity and job growth. So in other words, the requirement would be tied more closely to how much housing is actually being built in the community. And so for Pueblo, this will be beneficial because the housing market grows at a different pace than larger Front Range communities. And so moving to a formula based on local housing development and economic conditions makes the requirement more realistic and achievable while still encouraging affordable housing production. So this bill adds some flexibility by allowing local governments to request waivers if they make a good faith effort but can't meet these targets. So overall, this bill really helps ensure communities like Pueblo can continue to remain eligible for this Proposition 123 funding. And our recommendation would be to support this legislation as it moves through the process. Next is a bill dealing with homelessness prevention and response strategies at the state and regional level. This is House Bill 261202, Strategies to Reduce and Prevent Homelessness. This bill does 3 main things. First, it requires DOLA to develop a proposal for a statewide strategy to prevent homelessness and to resolve homelessness, which would be presented to the legislature in 2027. The goal is to better coordinate efforts across state agencies, local governments, and service providers. The proposal would look at gaps in services, existing housing resources, data systems used to track homelessness, and recommendations for funding and policy changes to improve how the state responds to homelessness. Second, the bill allows multiple local governments to voluntarily create what are called multi-jurisdictional homelessness response authorities. These would allow cities and counties to collaborate regionally to coordinate homelessness services, housing strategies, and planning efforts. And if these participating jurisdictions wanted to generate funding for these efforts, they could ask voters to approve a local sales tax dedicated specifically to homelessness response. That would require voter approval in each participating jurisdiction. And third, the bill allows counties to use a portion of their documentary recording fees collected during real estate transactions to support affordable housing projects. Those funds would be used to develop, preserve, or acquire housing that serves individuals experiencing homelessness. So overall, the bill really focuses on improving coordination between state and local governments and provides additional tools for communities like Pueblo to address homelessness. And third is the Senate Bill 26-112. This is court actions related to failure to appear. We sent a committee report on this bill last week. This bill deals with how courts handle repeated FTAs in low-level cases. And so under current Colorado law, when someone is charged with a low-level offense, generally crimes are punishable by 6 months in jail or less, and the court must typically release that person on what's called a PR bond. The challenge municipal courts have raised is that if a defendant repeatedly fails to appear in court, the judge often still has limited options and may have to release that person on a PR bond once they return to court. So this bill was initiated by the Colorado Municipal League. It aims to provide courts with an additional tool in these situations. Specifically, it would allow a judge to require a monetary bond after a defendant has failed to appear in court 3 times in the same case. They would not have to do this. It just gives them the permission to do so. So the bill is focused primarily on low-level property crimes such as petty theft, criminal mischief, arson, and comparable municipal state offenses. The intent is to create a step-up consequence after repeated failures to appear while still keeping PR bonds as the default for first appearances in low-level cases. And so for an update, the bill passed out of Senate Judiciary Committee last week on a 4-3 vote, and it's now awaiting consideration on second reading in the Senate. And this legislation has support from the Governor's Office, Colorado State Patrol, as well as the Department of Public Safety. And that concludes my remarks for this evening. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just a couple of things. The failure to appear bill, we're still working out some changes to that bill that we hope will make it better for Pueblo. Our state senator from Pueblo, Nick Hendrickson, put an amendment on there that actually created some ambiguity in terms of what the judges have to do in terms of failures to appear. So we're hoping we can get that corrected either on second reading in the Senate, but we'll continue to work on that. And secondly, I just wanted to echo what Alex said about the great work of your staff on, and particularly Melissa, for working on this housing bill. The state representative that is doing all of the stakeholding on this, Representative Basenecker from Fort Collins, made it a point to reach out to this lobbying team to say he really appreciated the great work that Pueblo put into the stakeholdering process. And with that, Madam Chair, that concludes our remark. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. The chair will now recognize the council and if they have any questions to field to the lobbyist. Chair will recognize Councilor Dante.
When you were talking about the 3 times repeated, are you talking about 3 times repeated to fail to appear?
That's correct, Councilor Dante.
So, is there anybody working on 3 times repeated offense for $2,000 and above? Or below? I mean.
I don't think we've seen an amendment on that. I will let Alex speak to it if he has any more information on that, Councilor Dante. As I said, this bill, in order to get this bill out of that particular committee, it was a close vote, 4-3. There were a number of things that the Colorado Municipal League wanted to get changed, but as I said, one of the amendments that reluctantly CML had to accept was the one from Senator Hendrickson, which created some ambiguity. But I'm not sure on the 3 the 3 failures to appear. Is there any more? Is there anything more that we can add to that, or we can get some more information for Councilor Dante? Alec,
No, sorry. I just, can you just restate the question, Counselor Dante?
Yeah, this bill is for 3 times repeated failure to appear. But we have a problem with repeat offenders that are not being placed under custody because it's less than $2,000 and they just keep repeating it. So in actuality, it becomes more than $2,000 after several repeated.
And so are these specific municipal ordinances then?
No, I think this is state, isn't it?
I think Councilwoman Dante is referring to theft from merchant, 2,000 and less. So the city does have an ordinance that was brought forward when I was on city council. And if you stole $300 3 times, you receive 3 mandatory days in jail. Last year, we updated that ordinance and dropped it from $300 to $100. They still have to go before the judge, but if they are caught doing it 3 times, there is the consequence of spending 3 mandatory days.
Now, does that include cars?
Mr. Gifford, does that include cars?
No.
I don't know if it's
so-
sent from merchants, so I guess it would.
There is a provision in our code, theft, general theft, not theft from a merchant particularly. But what this really, I think, is trying to address is the fact that we will have somebody who is cited for loitering or trespass or something to that effect, and then they just never come to court.
Right.
So, and because it's loitering, it's a personal recognizance bond. And that's granted, they get released from jail, they never show up, and really they stay out of the system until the next time they're arrested.
Right.
So what this will do is allow the judge, in those circumstances, hopefully, to be able to put a $50 or $100 cash only bond on these. So really what this is directed at are low-level municipal offenses. So
Right, I understood
it's
that.
possible, I haven't read the bill yet, but I believe it's possible that these would apply to the types of offenses you're speaking of.
Okay,
But I will be happy to look into it more and keep you apprised as well.
If I could add to that, Counselor Dante, so this bill only has to do with the bonds, which is what Mr. Gifford is referring to. So it doesn't have anything to do with the sentence. It only has to do with the bonds. But it would apply to the theft offenses, just like it is applying to all municipal offenses.
okay, thank you.
yeah.
Counselors, any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on with the counselors' agenda. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Member,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Up next on the council's agenda is Miss Shanna Farmer and Mr. Michael Muservi from United Way to present on the to give an update on LEAD program. Thank you, folks, for joining us, and the chair will recognize you for your presentation for 15 minutes.
Thank you so much for having us here. I'm Shanna Farmer. I'm President and CEO for United Way Pueblo County, and I'm joined by...
I'm Michael Muservi, Lead Center Manager at United Way Pueblo County.
And so we're here this evening because we were asked to provide an update about our nonprofit Lead Center, which is one of our programs that we offer. First, before we get into the presentation, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to share updates, and also to the city and the mayor's office for support of this project. So in your packet, we've provided a number of items for you to review, different brochures for our organization and the Lead Center. I won't talk too much about each one of those, but you do have those in front of you, I think both digitally and in your in a packet. So the goals for tonight, I'm just going to say it. I'm not here to ask you for money tonight. We are here to provide an update about the project, advocate for the nonprofit community and the amazing work that they're doing, and educate. You all are well aware, but we're going to talk a little bit about some of the needs that we are seeing and hearing, and also the impact on the nonprofits. Quickly, just want to share a little bit about our organization. Our mission is to serve as a trusted community leader by leveraging resources in support of collaborative solutions. And we do that by offering the programs that you see on screen under 4 pillars of focus. We focus our work on youth success, economic mobility and opportunity, community resilience, and nonprofit capacity development, which is what we will talk about most tonight with the Lead Center. And then also we are a funder and a fundraiser. And through our funder role, we do also give out community investment grants. So I know this is a new council from when we were coming and talking about the Lead Center in 2021 through 2023. So just want to give a high level history of the Lead Center. The process began for us in terms of applying for funding in 2021. Funds were awarded in 2023. We purchased the building and moved in early 2024. And now here we are tonight to talk about the work that's been done and the work that we're continuing to do. I don't expect you to read all of this, but this is from your very own website, City of Pueblo. This was the ARPA pillar page. And so the city had outlined priorities for ARPA funding, and we looked at that as an opportunity. We knew this was a one-time infusion of resources, and so we wanted to present a project that, number one, would address the priorities that were outlined in the pillars, which we applied, really focusing under strengthening nonprofits, innovation, and collaboration. And then funds for the project were awarded in 2023. This projected outcome slide is actually the same slide that we presented back in 21, 22, 23 when we were applying for funding initially. And I say all of those years because there were multiple conversations that happened, but we wanted to bring up the same slide that we presented then so we could show you that we are doing exactly what we promised to do with the funding. So before we dive into all of the details around the Lead Center, I just want to talk briefly about the community landscape and nonprofit impacts. We know that you're well aware of the challenges facing our nonprofits and our community. They're not going away, they're continuing to increase. Funding is limited, demands are higher. The needs of individuals and families are continuing to rise. As I mentioned, as a funder and fundraiser, we're seeing it on both sides. We're seeing increased demand in our grants processes. We're also finding it more and more challenging to fundraise in the ways that we always have been. And so, like all the nonprofits in our community are having to pivot to ensure that we're still able to provide the important services, but usually with less resources to do so. A recent United Way of Pueblo County study with some of our nonprofit partners showed that 87% of nonprofit providers report an increase in service demand, with nearly half of them reporting significant spikes in need. Many organizations are already operating on limited capacity. They have multiple jobs wearing multiple hats, outdated technology systems, with minimal access to professional development opportunities. And so that's one of many reasons why the Lead Center was a key part of the work that we wanted to do moving forward. ALICE. So who is ALICE? ALICE is an acronym for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. It's households that earn more than the federal poverty level, but less than the basic cost of living for our county. It is county specific. And here in Pueblo, 43% of our households are living as ALICE or below. And so that's almost half. And so the needs for nonprofits are strong, and we have a lot of work to be done. Just to talk about the impacts of nonprofits, we worked in partnership with the Healy Center, and they did a study to help really drive home the important role that nonprofits play in our community. And these were 3 statistics that I'd love to be able to have more time to go into. And actually the researchers would love to come and present here in front of council on much more detail. But nonprofits have a $3.2 billion impact. We are a driving force of the economy here. Nonprofits generate a 37,000% return on local investment. So for every dollar that the city or county is investing, nonprofits turn around and find another 37. Nonprofits create as many as 28,000 jobs through direct and indirect. So with that said, we have a lot of nonprofits doing great work. And our role here with the Lead Center is to help make sure that they have the resources that they need to be efficient and impactful.
So I'm gonna transition to talking about what happened with the actual building and then what happens with programming at the Lead Center. So we've talked a lot about the why of a nonprofit development center. So I'll dig into a little bit of the nuts and bolts of how that happened with the building, and then the bigger picture of programming that's occurring at the facility and in the community. So you can think of the building renovations as happening kind of in two phases. The first phase was dealing with all of the challenges immediately after purchasing the building that needed to address problems associated with a building that was old, underutilized, and had a lot of deferred maintenance. One of the economic impacts of the funding that City Council provided through these ARPA funds was in one small way a renovation of a building in that community. The building was deeply underutilized. So like I said, there's a lot of deferred maintenance going on, and had that continued, it would be a net risk for the community. But the result of United Way being able to come in there was to bring the utilization of that facility back up and provide it as a net asset to the community. Some of the things that involved in round one was just to move United Way offices into the building. There's 3 stories on the building. The first, the top story is United Way offices. The middle story is the main level is Lead Center programming, and the lower level is a training center. But when we moved into the building, none of that was the case. So job number one was to get United Way into the upper story of the building. The main level of the building was in our lease, in our purchase agreement, was to continue a lease with the agency that was operating in there until July of 2025. So going back, we purchased the building right around the beginning of 2024, moved in, continue that lease all the way till the middle of 2025 on the main level. So in the meantime, we continued to work on renovations in the lower level of the building, which had to do with refitting it and purposing it for a training space. That involved moving a lot of paper that had accumulated in that space for over decades, refinishing the floor, getting painting, upfitting, and doing a whole bunch of other things that would get it ready to be able to utilize. So that was all during the phase where the main level was occupied with another tenant. And then the round 2 started in July of 2025, and that was to refit the main level for programming. The whole point there was to ready that level for offices that could be occupied by nonprofits in the community, prep a conference room on that level, and basically clean, do network upgrades, whole bunch of repairs to that level of the office, get that conference room ready, do the prep work for those offices, and start getting them occupied. So that's a lot of information about the building. So let's turn our attention now. We'll transition the conversation to talking about all of the other things that are happening as a result of programming with the Lead Center. So break that into 6 basic categories. So this is the areas of focus that we have with the Lead Center and providing resources to nonprofits. Our whole goal here is doing everything that we can to support nonprofits. This economic engine of Pueblo, much like regular business operations and business development that happens in Pueblo, we're positioning ourselves in the space of doing that kind of business development, that kind of support and resourcing specifically for nonprofits, these agencies that do so much to help the community, but also pull in funding from outside sources to spend that on services and employment in Pueblo County. Nonprofits are such a unique kind of agency. They're an importer of resources into the community, not an exporter of wealth, not an exporter of services, but a massive importer of funds and as a result, employment in the community. So our job is to support those. So we do that in 6 major areas. So the first one is funding. We distribute funding to organizations through grants that we provide directly, as well as grants that we manage as United Way. We've developed a program what we call volunteer advising corps, where we provide one-on-one consulting. We're a matchmaking organization between professionals, nonprofit professionals, and community and agencies that are trying to solve a particular problem. So we connect consulting services with free consulting work on behalf of organizations in the city and the county. Education resources, we have in your packet, you'll see the workshops that we're providing this year. That slate of workshops will expand next year, as well as be supplemented by smaller lunch and learns and other things like that. When it comes to resources, we provide office day use office space. We provide networking opportunities. Training rooms, and our training room and conference center are available to nonprofits for free. They can just book time to use those resources as needed. And then finally, office space. We talked about that before. We have 13 offices available for long-term lease in our building. And then Hub is a specific program of United Way that operates out of the main level of our building, that is designed to connect agencies and the work that they're doing in terms of referrals, to make those referrals easier, more efficient, quicker, and less drop off from individuals that are trying to seek resources in the community. So that's a lot about us. We've got just a very short time left that we'd just like to open up for any questions that you might have. And this is a little more information on those workshops. The first one was on grant writing to provide support to agencies. The one coming up in April is going to be on board governance. We have a workshop on AI coming up in the summer, and in the fall we'll have another one on volunteer management. And these were workshops and areas of focus that nonprofits specifically asked for in a needs assessment that we provided in the community. What questions do you have? Councilor Ayla.
The chair recognizes Councilor Ayla.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Now, excuse me. That's very informative. The questions that I have is, since the LEAD program's put in, I mean, these are good. This is a good overview of the program, but where are the numbers? I mean, how many people are being serviced? I mean, for instance, I was looking at where did it go? Are all the office spaces rented?
Great question. So we have out of 13 offices, we have 4 that are occupied and 8 remaining.
Okay. I guess what I'm looking for is the results of all of the investment. So I haven't seen any of that, and it would be very beneficial for me personally if I saw how many people are being served, what kind of money is being generated. Is it paying for itself? Is it going to be a constant, you need more money, you need more money? You get what I'm saying.
Those are excellent questions. And so since the LEAD Center has fully been open in totality for under a year, we will be having hard and fast numbers. So in our first workshop that was offered earlier this year, we had 35 different individuals from various organizations attending that grant writing workshop. And so that's just one example. On average, prior to LEAD, United Way works with over 75 different nonprofit organizations on an annual basis. And so we anticipate that these numbers will only increase. And right now we have been able to work with a handful, which I know is not the hard and fast number you want, but we'll get that to you, of organizations with that volunteer advising corps. And so we'll do a really nice sort of of a year of how this has impacted. It's going to continue to increase because it took some time to get it all in place. We've had to spend a lot of time building it, but now we know that we will be serving a very large number of nonprofits. Now, nobody's forced to participate. And so we hope that more people that, as they see greater value, start to come into these various workshops, into the space, because it is a great space. And one thing we had committed to in our initial proposal to you is that the space would be available at below market rates. And so we are offering a really good package for organizations. It takes time if they're currently in some kind of agreement, a lease agreement, that they've got to terminate that, or that they've got to figure out their budget moving forward, as their budget may be shrinking right now. So we're looking forward to doing a full 1 year look back with all the data, and we can even do a mid-year for you.
Thank you.
Would you like to add?
Yeah, a couple other numbers that might be helpful as you're thinking about the impact. So the utilization of the space in the lower level conference room and mid-level conference room, main level conference room, we've already hit 50% utilization of those two places, of those two areas of the agency. So on any given day of the month, we're using those spaces at least 50% of the time. Additionally, we know that there's about 500 organizations that operate. That's an estimate that we have. There are about 500 different agencies that exist and operate in Pueblo County. We've had direct contact with over 100 of those. So those are agencies that we know who they are. We know what they do. We have a record of their impacts, and we're in communication with them on a regular basis. Secondly, at those agencies, we're in direct contact with over 300 of their leaders and staff at those agencies. So when we talk to agencies about what we're doing, we're communicating with over 300 people in the county. When it comes to things like programming, as Ms. Farmer mentioned, our very first workshop was attended by 35. We have space for 40. We have space for 40 in that facility. So we nearly maxed it out. We'll do the same again with the next one. We have a slate of other events that will happen throughout the year. And then additionally, when we release the application to apply for CIG grants or community investment grants, we had 46 agencies that applied for that, and we'll when we release funding to a subset of those agencies, that would be direct impact for funding.
Okay, I just want to clarify what I was trying to say, because I hope that I just want to know what does success look like? Is it just talking to people? I would better understand it. I think I'm in a position where I don't understand exactly what the end game is, or what why did we invest all of the money? And how do we measure the success of the program? And I guess that's what I'm looking for, is what measurements measure success?
Excellent questions. There's a lot of different ways, right? It's that connection piece. It's getting them involved. But really, if we're talking about outcomes, and we can track numbers all day of who attended, how many bodies are in the facility. But really, what are the longer term outcomes of the program? Things like, are we able to get more collaborative grant funding? So that is also a piece of this that we've just started working through on how can we work together across multiple organizations that can bring in additional dollars that we weren't seeing before. So dollars, numbers of people served. So the community resource hub that he mentioned is really going to help us track, number one, what kinds of services are people in need of? what are the outcomes? How many are able to be served? Where are the gaps? Because there are areas that we know they're just not funded enough to fully help meet all of the needs. And so there's a lot of different markers, and would love to sit down with you if there's certain ones that we are not already thinking about. And because we are measuring what we're doing right now. But when we think more longitudinally down the road of how are we really making our sector stronger, what metrics are going to be really important to you? We know what's important to us and those that we're serving, but are there additional metrics that we can measure? We certainly would be open to discussing that more.
Chair, I'll recognize Counselor Dante.
Hi. On these workshops, are they repetitive every year or do they change?
So right now we're in year 1 of workshops, and so they're brand new. And they're provided because those were 4 topics that our local nonprofits said to us, please, we really need some help or some additional resources around this. We will look at for next year, are there certain ones that we repeat? Probably. There will also probably be some new ones that come along.
Okay. And your long-term office spaces, are those for everybody or just nonprofits?
So nonprofit organizations.
And is this and when you say long-term, does that mean incubator long-term or just forever?
Well, we don't, we're not discriminating on that in terms of what's the time period that's needed. Our goal is to assist nonprofits in any way that we can. Some nonprofits are stable in their operations of only needing a single office. So for that nonprofit, you'll think of a nonprofit that may have regional or statewide impact or even nationwide impact, but needs an office locally. That would be a nonprofit that wouldn't need to change up its operations over time. And so a single office is all they would need in perpetuity. So for that agency, we would see a long-term lease as something that would be, that would be a near permanent situation for them. Whereas other agencies might need an office now, they might need 6 offices in 10 years. So that would be an agency where it would be more of an incubator model. We're not saying it has to be one or the other. We'd be happy to serve either of those agencies depending on the need and a fit for the space.
Okay, and when it comes to event spaces, is that going to be dependent on the finances of the nonprofit? Could it possibly be 0?
To use the event space specifically?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Are you talking about the event space specifically, like the training center and that bigger area? So that's available at no cost to nonprofits to utilize.
I'm sorry, say that again.
So the training space or the event space, it's available at no cost. The office space is what does have a cost associated.
Okay.
Chair, I'll recognize Counselor Gomez.
Yeah, hi, this is a great program. You guys are pretty ambitious, I can tell you that. I've worked a couple of intern programs, once when I was with the Congressman's office. And what we found out is we could find out some incentives for the specifically at-risk students that were coming out of Keating that worked with us through the SEEDS program. At that time, it was called Sharing Equipment Electronic District and Statewide, where we were able to go out and bring in computers that were going to be tossed into the dumps. And we brought them into the schools. We renovated Keating. We had these at-risk students come in. And the payoff was this: if we can work with the schools and they're willing to give there's certain marks they have to hit. And if they can get through the program and help participate to help other schools and other pieces that get this, they would get school credit. And a lot of them ended up going to PCC. So there was a win-win for everybody. So like I'm saying, this is, I guess, in reference to one of the things I was reading up on was that you guys are, the program you have now can build some soft schools that schools tend to miss. And there's a lot there. Some of the cons are that one of the things I read, it does not reach the majority of public schools yet. And I think that's what you're trying to get to. Like I said, I think if you look at some of the things with CSU and with PCC and see if you can get something where they're going to help other folks, and this is the reward is getting them into those schools, everybody helps. One of the things, what was the number of participating students so far that you had? I mean, I think I missed that.
So I think we were referring to the nonprofits that were participating, but
Okay.
I'm glad you brought up students, if I may I add a couple comments about that? So we have been proud to host students from CSU Pueblo pretty much every semester, at least one, if not more. And we would like to grow that. That's actually something that has emerged in conversations. We host a monthly executive chats with executive directors and CEOs of our local nonprofits, and helping to mobilize student engagement is something that has come up. And so that's an area we know we have a lot more work to do. Separately, we have a middle school mentoring program. But we know that there's a lot more opportunities to engage students in this work. And I would love to meet with you further, and we'd love to have you come visit and maybe talk more about what you've done. But how can we connect to more students? We've got some models that we're looking at, and that's an area that we're not quite there yet fully, but we want to do a lot more, because one, it'll increase capacity for us and our partner organizations, but it gives students an incredible opportunity to build some skills and build their resumes.
Well, Michael, I promise I'm gonna come see you when you least expect it.
Looking
I
forward to
usually end
that.
up showing up at somebody's doorstep. What I'd like to know is, in reference to your program with transportation and scheduling and those things, are those issues that you're looking at, or you have ways to solve that? Because that comes, the program we had, that was a big issue, was the transportation part of it. How does that, is there ways you can cure that or get to the bottom of that? Because it's a real issue.
We'd love to work in partnership with you on some of that, certainly. One of the, when we presented to you all back in, 21, 22, 23, we talked about finding a building that was near a bus route, that was centrally located, and we did that. And so we know that doesn't answer all of the questions that you're asking, but that was one of the initial commitments that we made. And to your point, especially if we're talking around more student engagement, figuring out how to reduce those barriers, but also reducing barriers for those in need of services and how can they get to the facility. And so while we are centrally located, we are near a bus line, there's always work that can be done that I think we can make it more accessible for people to get to us.
Well, I think the city's open up to getting students around town, which is pretty cool. But one more thing I was going to ask you in reference to, it's not just the businesses. I'd like to see a lot of students. I think we got to do mentorships in reference to council. I brought a young man in here by the name of Josiah Williams, and he had him follow me for one day, introduced him to the councilors, introduced him to the county commissioners, and got him involved in that, because as long as we'd like to think we're going to stay in this planet forever, we're leaving this for them. And I think that's another part that you should try to incorporate into your program, letting them see how their government works, how it impacts with jobs. And I think this is something you should really consider.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, Chair will recognize Councilor Latino.
Thank you. I don't know how many of the counselors here have taken the opportunity to go over to the United Way facilities. I have. And Michael, you were a great help to me, and so was your staff. I would suggest and encourage the council members here to set up an appointment and go over and see what's going on over there. Okay, we had a constituent from the east side who was struggling, literally struggling. It had to do with a housing situation where she was basically moved out of her own house by the homeless after she had tried to help one of them. And so Michael and his staff helped us with that and put us in touch with the right people and have been supportive of that. And so I would highly encourage you to take the opportunity when you have time. I know you as council men and women, you're busy with other things, but take the opportunity to go over and meet with these folks and take a tour. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair will recognize Councilor Hernandez.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to visit with you last week. I think it was last week, and I really enjoyed the tour. Wonderful facility. I didn't get to see you. I think you were sick that day. I look forward to going back and see you as well. Please keep up the hard work. I know it's difficult work dealing with a lot of nonprofits, and we appreciate your efforts. Look forward to the data when you have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, councilors, any other questions? Chair will recognize Councilor Boston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, guys. I just had one question. I know you were talking about that grant writing workshop that you guys put on. I thought I remembered hearing something about you guys were gonna have an in-house grant writer to help nonprofits in finding grants. Is that something that you guys are still planning to pursue, or have you achieved that yet?
So yes, so we've initially started that work with the hiring of our lead center manager. The first lift for his role, with all that he shared about getting the building ready, did take a little bit more time than anticipated, but he has actually been working on some really great projects that we could talk to you all night about in terms of helping to identify additional funding sources and community collaborations among multiple agencies. So it is a work in progress, but we are moving forward with some of that work. But we know we have more opportunity and a lot more work to be done.
So eventually your role will become the grant writer in-house to help nonprofits, or?
It's a piece of it.
Okay.
Yes. We have a long-term strategy in terms of what is optimal as far as staffing and what we'd like to see in terms of capacity. We also have to be realistic in our budgetary constraints at this point in time, but we have, again, to Councilman Ayler, you made a great point about investment. I will say, because of the city's investment of the $600,000 for the building purchase, we have gone and fundraised an additional over $1.2 million to support the project, not taking away from our other core work like our grant making, but from entities and partners that are specifically interested in this. And so we anticipate it's not going to be easy, but we anticipate that we will continue to find ways to invest in this work.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one more.
Okay, the chair recognizes Councilor Gomez.
Shanna, are you acquainted with Rocky Mountain Sir?
We do partner with them in various ways.
Wonderful, because I saw in some of your information, you feed, clothe, leadership, and besides just the leadership program, but also education. And that seems to fit into their bailiwick as well. And they happen to be in my district. So, but if there's any way I could help get that together, I'd love to see if we can get something done over there.
Thank you. And they're doing amazing work. And they were actually just the recipient of, when the SNAP crisis occurred, we launched an emergency fund, and they were the recipient of those funds. And so they're doing amazing work.
It's a good crew over there.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, we will close this portion of the council's agenda. Thank you for
Thank
your work
you.
in our community. We thank you for coming and visiting with us today. We look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. An honor to be here.
Next on the council's agenda, the chair will recognize Melissa Cook, Director of Department of Housing and Citizen Services, to discuss the CSAC IGA. Ms. Cook, you'll be recognized for a 15-minute presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Gomez. So let's get started. I want to talk about CSAC. We're going to do a little brief overview and then talk about the meeting last week and what path forward looked like. So as you may know, CSAC began in 2003. It was a joint city council and board of county commissioners body that appointed 14 members, including one member from United Way, to serve on terms. They're jointly appointed. And what they would do is they would provide recommendations of certain allocated funds from the city and the county for nonprofits, essentially based on what is in the intergovernmental agreement, which is what we're going to be discussing tonight. So in the intergovernmental agreement, the two bodies, the city council and the county commissioners, create what their priorities are. That intergovernmental agreement, you should have in front of you, but that has been the same since 2003. It has just been amended. So every year since 2003, we've been providing amendments, extending it for a one-year term at the same time that we previously would accept the recommendations. So the relationship is you have the city and the county. Their intergovernmental agreement exists between the two entities. That is what creates the Community Services Advisory Commission. Without the intergovernmental agreement, the Community Services Advisory Commission does not exist. Once that is created, they then have their recommendations that they give back up to the city and the county. Traditionally, those are accepted, and then operating agreements are executed on those. Last year, we heard from both City Council, a lot of you sitting here tonight, as well as the Board of County Commissioners, that they felt like there were some adjustments that needed to be made to this intergovernmental agreement. There were a few concerns. So first of all, the concerns were program oversight. They felt like maybe we could do a better job doing monitoring, long-term monitoring, site visits, et cetera. It was identified that the CSAC members themselves were actually the ones doing a lot of that monitoring. Of course, these are city and county funds. We want to make sure, as the ones responsible to the taxpayers, that the dollars are being spent appropriately. So that was a concern. The secondary concern was CSAC really doesn't have a lot of administrative support. You heard the chair, Gina Lopez Ferguson, come in here and say, I think the stat was 96 hours was the average that the CSAC members put in. I absolutely believe that. And Gina herself has put in considerably more than that. And for a volunteer board, that is too much to ask. And so we need to provide some sort of additional CSAC support, administrative support when they're reviewing these applications, when they're doing the monitoring, all of that. CSAC's done a great job with the resources that they have, and I applaud them, but we do need to provide additional support. So that was a secondary issue that came up last year. The third one was the actual eligibility, the uses. There were a lot of counselors and commissioners that thought that the way that CSAC was created at that time, or the way that the IGA read, that it could create some sort of dependency to the nonprofits. And so they wanted to look at that and address that. Most specifically, and we actually heard this in these chambers just the other day, was the idea of funding operations or prioritizing non-operational applicants. So out of that, what we ended up doing is we had several work sessions. You can go back and look and watch those work sessions if you want additional information. They were joint with the county commissioners and city council, and we had really good participation. I think that we had almost every one of the city councilors and county commissioners there both times, along with the mayor. And so the outcomes of these meetings were, first of all, we decided that we would update the intergovernmental agreement. That is what was on for first reading last Monday. It would do a few things. First, it would shift the administration from the county to the city. So traditionally, the city has paid the county to administer this program. As of recently, they did not have a dedicated staff or even a part-time employee assigned to it. And we felt like with the changes going on at the city, we could do a better job or a more transparent job for us in doing that. I don't want to say better job, but we would do a more transparent job. And we think that we could do that. So the way that it would work is the city would actually pay part of their funding, $30,000 to the city to help assist a half-time employee. That half-time employee would provide oversight, they would do the monitoring, and they would be that CSAC administrative support, as well as helping to review the applications. Additionally, out of that, we were looking at how we could change the IGA to essentially put more parameters on it based on what the elected officials wanted. This really is the mechanism for all of you and the county commissioners to say what you want. And so we did 4 things. And actually, you'll see in front of you, you have an addendum. An Exhibit A. We intentionally put these very specifically in the exhibit to the contract. So whenever council or the county commissioners needed to update this, they would simply have to update this one exhibit instead of going through and amending the entire IGA every time. Specifically, what you have in front of you is highlighted, and it's number 3. That is what we added. And the 4 things that we added was we were prioritizing first-time applicants, prioritizing applicants that didn't receive funding the prior year. I know they sound similar, but they are different. We were prioritizing programmatic applications over operating, and we were prioritizing agencies that were providing reduced rate childcare for low-income families, essentially creating a carve out for the large childcare facilities. There was appetite to do that last year with the work sessions that we had. And so that was the IGA. That is the IGA that was presented last Monday. What happened, whether intentional or not, was during that was pulled off of first reading, and it was voted not to move forward, thus effectively dissolving CSAC. And so as of today, as we sit here, CSAC does not exist. We still have $550,000 budgeted and appropriated out of the city's general fund, and then the county had budgeted and appropriated their funds. So the funding is still there, budgeted and appropriated. But at this point, I think what we need is some guidance on how we want to proceed. If it was indeed the intent of council to terminate CSAC, or if there were just questions on the recommendations after some back and forth, it seems that maybe that is the case. And then I think once you provide guidance, I would love to come back and talk second this evening about what we need to do if it is just the recommendations. But with that, really, that's where we are right now. I need some guidance from council before we can move forward.
Chair will recognize President Aliff.
Well, I think one of the most important aspects of CSAC that should have been in the presentation was literally why CSAC was created. And the creation of CSAC was specifically to take the onus of making the decisions off of city council and the county commissioners. They didn't want to sit through hours and hours of presentations, decipher all of the information that comes in. City councilors didn't want to go out and visit the nonprofits and come back and make recommendations, look at their books, do all the other things that CSAC does. So the county and the city created CSAC specifically to take that burden off of city council and the county commissioners in the decision-making process. I truly don't remember a time when I've been on city council where the CSAC recommendations didn't come forward, that there weren't questions or that there weren't concerns about the way something was going. But there's avenues to take care of that, and there's avenues to address those specific issues without throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And I think that's what we did last Monday, is to say, we have questions about specific fundings, so we don't agree with it, so let's just get rid of CSAC. And I don't know that that was the intention. I didn't vote to do away with it. I voted for it. But I hope that there's some reconsideration on this board, that this would be a huge, huge mistake to do away with CSAC and to bring that back into the responsibility of city council to do all of the things that CSAC does. I think maybe in the IGA you could add something, or we can amend it at some point. Specifically, the concerns on the difference between operational expenses and what the intent is of nonprofit funding and what isn't the intent of nonprofit funding. And I think those can be addressed. So I would urge city council, to give the administration direction to bring this back up, to put it back onto the agenda, and to put this important entity back where it belongs. And a lot of thought went into this IGA, and a lot of input went into this IGA, and it would just be a shame. It would be a tragedy, in my opinion, to do away with it. And I think that was a huge mistake, and hopefully we can rectify that and give direction to move forward. So it would be my recommendation that this goes back on the agenda for a first reading again, and we relook at it as and keep CSAC.
The chair will recognize Councilor Latino.
Thank you. I want to concur with what Councilman Aliff just spoke about. We have two entities. We have the city council or the city government. We have the county government with the county commissioners. And I think we have a number of entities that we're dealing with, from road construction to you name it. And I think this avenue gives us an opportunity to discuss those things with those at the state level, those at the city level, and those at the county level. And I think that it's very important that we work in a cohesive manner. And so I concur and support what Mr. Aliff said, or Councilman Aliff. Thank you.
Chair will recognize Counselor Boston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm not sure if this would be a situation where someone on the prevailing side would have to ask for this to be brought back for reconsideration, or is this a situation where since it was killed before it went forward, anybody could ask that it be brought back?
It's my understanding it didn't pass first reading.
It didn't.
I'd have to look into it more, but if there's somebody who did vote no, I think that would be the cleanest way to approach this.
So if you were one of the counselors that voted no on this, maybe that would be a good recommendation tonight. As Councilman Aliff said, you know, I mean, not that we're not wanting to be involved and be invested as city councilors, but the work that CSAC does to add it on top of the city councilors or the county commissioner's plate would be a lot, which is why this was established in the first place, whether or not we agreed with funding. Was Exhibit A part of the IGA for this year?
That was one of the main changes, was Exhibit A. So the main changes was it shifted the funding from, or the administration from the county to the city. And then, yes, this was part of what we were voting on last week.
So the allocations that were presented did not follow this guidance?
Correct, because that would be for this upcoming
Okay,
cycle.
just want to make sure, because I was like looking at it and I think it was A and B not receiving funding last year, first time applicants, there was, 6 people or whatever. We talked about not getting it and things like that. So that might have been part of the confusion, but I wholeheartedly agree that maybe some changes need to be considered, but I would recommend that this also be brought back for consideration.
The chair will recognize, go ahead first. Roger?
Oh, I'm
Re-
sorry.
The chair will recognize Counselor Gomez.
I just wanted, I had gone to a meeting way back at, and this was prior to Gina Lopez coming on board. And boy, I could tell the difference. I mean, I don't know if she's had enough time. I don't know what you're considering, what I saw them present when I was there was a lot different from the meeting I had gone to it in the first, not before she was the, I guess, the executive director, the chair. So I want to just, it was professionally run. And this also seems to marry up well with United Way. The missions are close, and maybe there is a connection there that I'm not seeing, or is that correct?
Yeah, when CSAC was created, because there is so much potential crossover back in 2003, they requested that there be a voting member from United Way on the CSAC board. So it has been Shanna or her designee in recent years that actually sits on the CSAC board and is very involved in this.
Great, that's what I want to find out. Thank you.
Chair will recognize Counselor Hernandez.
When we talked about this last week, we talked about specifically the way the money was allocated to each of the individual agencies that were requesting dollars. I think that probably what we should have done in hindsight is vote on the IGA itself and then vote on the allocations themselves in 2 separate votes. Or
2 separate.
no, they were one ordinance.
I think that's where the confusion, if I may, came in. Last week, last Monday was only for the IGA. The actual recommendation
Got it.
will come at a future
So
date.
why was the discussion around the recommendations and not just the IGA itself? That's what we were concerned about, was the recommendations that were made. And also that as I understood it, I won't speak for the rest of the counselors. The recommendations similar to what's recommended for next year were also given for this IGA, for these allocations, and it didn't seem like they were adhered to. Am I wrong? Did you guys not have those same guidance, the same guidance?
This has not yet been passed. This is what was before you last Monday. And so right now,
Gotcha.
the allocations that are before, or what Gina presented and those proposed recommendations do fall under the previous iteration of the intergovernmental agreement.
So what I was asking, what I'm asking is that was not this current allocation for this year did not have any guidance at all?
it did have guidance under the previous intergovernmental agreement, but it really just has priorities. It doesn't have any of these priority considerations that we're going to give, the four highlighted things that priority should be given to first-time applicants, to non-operational. That does not exist.
Okay, so then what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to redo the ordinance for the IGA? Okay. Thank you.
The chair will recognize Counselor Dante.
Yes. As I asked last week, why are the two different issues on the same ordinance? I asked this last week, and you said that we're only voting on the IGA. But yet the recommendations are attached to it. And then the background paper, and I will read it per the ordinance. The adoption of this ordinance also accepts the recommendations attached from CSAC. So that right there is the main reason I didn't vote for it, because then I would be voting for recommendations that I was not sure that the way it was set up was exactly what I wanted to see. So for me, I need to have those two items separated.
Great. And yeah, Counselor Dante, I completely agree with you. I think where the confusion came from was in the past for those last 20 ordinances, or the last 20 times where they've amended it, it has been attached. So I don't know what you're seeing. It could be that you're seeing the attachment of one of the old ones that, you know, it was there. Hindsight's 2020. I would not have attached the recommendations to this had I understood. So fair concern. But yeah,
Well, even if you hadn't attached the recommendations, it's still in the background paper. So that's what's making it real confusing.
Okay.
And I had some other things that I'm concerned about. I read the IGA all the way through. I read the bylaws all the way through. There's a Rubik's ranking that has all kinds of criteria. And my question is, why would you not update your bylaws to include all these criteria, including the ones that you have on Exhibit A? Because the way I understand bylaws is if it's not on there, you don't have to do it. If it's on there, you need to do it.
Yeah, so we have every intention on updating the bylaws. What we are doing is we wanted to get the IGA done. We already have red line versions of the bylaws that has been floated through the CSAC board, and they are comfortable with them. So we have them ready to go. We will be updating the bylaws if this comes back and is passed.
Okay, so my only suggestion is to separate them, and it will probably end up passing.
For me, I had the same questions similar to Counselor Dante, and I'm wondering if I could ask either Harley or Carla. In the background paper, I saw that as well, that it did accept the funding and the IGA together. So would you all clarify for us if in fact we were voting for the two items in the ordinance that was presented in last week's meeting for the funding recommendations and to accept the IGA?
Sure, I think City Attorney Sykes might have the best answer to that, but I may, if I could, take this opportunity to go back to Councilman Boston's question. Based on, I think, the confusion in that prior ordinance, the best way to go forward would be to start the process all over again with a redrafted ordinance, with the redrafted background paper, so that council is clear on what it is they're voting for. Additionally, the 10-day limit to make a motion at a regular special meeting would expire Tuesday or Wednesday. So we would essentially have to have another meeting if we wanted to go with the reconsideration route. It may be easier, if we have time, to have this be on first hearing at the 23rd, if possible, if not at the first meeting in April.
So there was discussion internally with staff to separate the two ordinances. As you heard Melissa say, traditionally they have been combined, but this year, because we were doing the modification of the IGA, we had elected to separate the two. And I think the confusion came in is that language was still in the background paper, and unfortunately that language didn't get out of the background paper before it was posted to council, and apologize for that.
for that confusion. It should have come out because they truly were separated. And that's why we delayed. We had the IGA on first, and then the allocations are actually coming on for first reading on March 23rd. So we actually delayed the allocations too, to try and avoid that confusion. And unfortunately, didn't accomplish that. So there was some confusion. We can certainly, we can separate them. We can put them both on for first reading at the same time under two separate ordinances. They will be two separate ordinances. But they will come on for first reading at the same time.
I don't think we're ready with the intergovernmental or the
With the
the
allocation.
operating agreements.
Okay, all right, so it sounds like we'll have them both on. We won't have them both on for first reading, but we can bring this one back on March 23rd for first reading for the IGA. And then the allocations will come back for first reading at a later date, first reading in April or some other time.
Yeah, the only slowdown there is because the city, once this IGA is executed, the city will be doing all the administrative work. We have to create the 30 operating agreements or so and then vet those contracts through the county's, the county attorney, and they have to agree to all those to form before we can bring them back to you. So to bring them back to you on Monday would not be reasonable.
Chair will recognize President Daley.
I have a question, and I know that if you bring back the funding agreement, the way that it was presented, it's not going to pass. So I'm trying to talk to to help the counselors that are going to object to it. What's their remedy to get to somebody before that comes as an ordinance? Why put off the inevitable?
So I think there's a few things that we can do. First, we can accept, whether it's individually, maybe individual emails of what the problem is. But what probably makes more sense is to identify, here on the dais, what it is that we don't like. We would recommend that you pull those out, make a motion to amend the recommendations, pull those out so that the others are actually passed. And then those ones that are pulled can go back to the CSAC board, and they could be discussed then. But something else that's really important with all of this, it's a perfect, kind of a perfect storm, if you would, because of the county and the situation that they're in. Right now, we will not likely be getting funding out to any of the nonprofits until the end of June or early July, best case scenario. And so that's why additionally, we think it's really important to just pull out the ones that you do not agree with and let the others go through.
Melissa, is that, when you say that, for just a point of clarification, is that like the actual organizations you would like us to pull out? It's not up to us to decide, just, is it the amendments in the ordinance you're referring to?
Sorry, it would not have anything to do with the IGA when the IGA comes through. But when we bring through the recommendations are going to come to you similar to how they've been presented in a spreadsheet, and attached to that is going to be, however, I think there's 29 or 30 organizations and their corresponding subrecipient agreements. I think it would be cleanest if we just pulled out the ones and said, we will approve this except for organization X, Y, and Z.
And that is our decision.
Right.
It's absolutely city council's decision on whether to approve it, to amend it, and do anything that they want to do.
Thank you. Chair will recognize Councilor Dante, and then we'll go over to her.
But what if we want to add some in? If we want to post some out and then add some in, because I noticed that on your presentation from last week, not last week, week before last, that you had eliminated all the economic development organizations. So it's like, I'm concerned because economic development in this city is important.
Yeah, and just a point of clarification, I want to be very clear. These are not the city's recommendations. So I'm just simply the liaison for CSAC for the city. So adding in additional funding obviously complicates that, because once you allocate the funding, except for funding that's pulled out, you don't have additional funding to allocate.
Well, if you pull out some, you can add in some.
No.
You'd have to
Mhm.
pull from one to give to another.
Right.
So it becomes complicated so what they're coming to you is with their recommendations. If you want to, let's say there's 30 recommendations. If you wanted to, make a motion to approve 28 of those, pull out 2 of those, have some conversation with them as to why they approved it, and the amounts that they did, and get clarification and maybe approve those at a later date, then we can certainly do that. If what you want to do is go through all 28 of those and say, no, we think you ought to give $5,000 more here and $5,000 less here, then I would caution you, because what you are kind of doing is supplanting what they've already done. And that is going to become complicated, and it will certainly be more complicated than what we probably want to do on the fly at the next meeting. So if you have those types of questions, what I would encourage you to do is get in touch with Melissa, maybe sit down with someone from CSAC and spend some time going through some of those questions with them ahead of time, so that they can answer those questions and maybe answer the whys before you come in here, so you can get some of those questions answered, and feel comfortable about that going forward.
And really quickly, it's also important to remember that any changes that we make have to then go back to the county commissioners for them to accept these changes as well.
I understand.
The chair recognizes Councilor Hernandez.
So 2 questions. If there's somebody on the list that we would like removed, I would like to give those to you in advance so you can have the information available so that the rest of the councilors have information so they can vote one way or the other, correct? That's how it would work. We would have to approve.
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, this is never,
So-
these are uncharted waters,
So
so.
as long as we get information, I will send you the ones that I think should come off, and that way you can give us additional information so councilors have the information that I have. And the second one is, how do we become more involved in the process as councilors?
First of all, the intergovernmental agreement is really a big deal. I think that as counselors, if we pass this as is, we can revisit this again in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, if you have additional changes to the criteria. Just remember that everyone does, this body and the Board of County Commissioners have to approve it. And so if there are specific things that you want to see, one thing very specifically we talked about, we just couldn't come to a resolution, is should there be a carve out for economic development, for arts and cultures? That was really a hot topic. Never really did get resolution to that one. So if this board wants to bring back something like that, it's absolutely within your purview to do so.
I'm talking about involvement with the process of deciding how those dollars are allocated. Is there an opportunity for councilors to be involved on the commission?
I can answer that.
Thank you.
No.
No? Okay.
And specifically during the meetings, that was a big stickler for me, is that I felt that there should be city council representation on CSAC, and I thought there should be county commissioner representation. It's 2 seats. Give city council a voice, and give the county commissioners a voice. I don't believe that the county commissioners wanted to be on it. And so it kind of fell by the wayside there. I think the critical thing, that we got to keep going back to is, if you want to be involved, then don't vote for the IGA and just bring it all back to city council. If you guys want to make the decisions on every single nonprofit that comes through, then don't approve the IGA and bring it all back to city council. My guess would be that after 1 year of that, you'd immediately bring forward an IGA and create CSAC again, because that happens. But I don't know why, and I guess that it does have to go back. If we change anything in the IGA, it would have to go back to the county commissioners. But I mean, I think that I would be very supportive of a seat of city council, of a city councilor on that board.
And you could propose that change to the IGA. If you wanted to do that, that would be a change to the IGA that would have to be approved by the county commissioners. But if you wanted to propose that someone from city council and someone from the county commissioners sat on CSAC, you could certainly do that.
What are the 2 chairs that don't vote?
Ex officio.
Ex officio chairs? Is,
I thought there were two positions that are non-voting positions on the CSAC.
I'm not sure.
so United Way does.
United Way is a non-voting.
United Way and what?
United Way is, I
I
guess.
believe United Way is a non-voting.
Okay. So there's not. So you don't actually have a position on CSAC? No?
No, and I very specifically am completely separate from their recommendations. I don't weigh in on anything. I am simply there for administrative support and essentially a liaison to the city.
So we could have one commissioner and one counselor if we requested it.
Potentially.
Potentially,
So-
you could propose that as a change.
My other question is, and again, I'm back to the bylaws, is that a lot of these changes are on criteria. So would they be in both the IGA and the bylaws?
So typically the IGA gets approved first and then the bylaws track the IGA. So once you approve the IGA, then it would go back to the group and then they would amend their bylaws to be consistent with the IGA.
But that wouldn't put the criteria in the bylaws.
It would if they're contained within the IGA. So the IGA would be an exhibit A to the IGA.
So what I would have to do is go request you to put all of those criterias that's on the Rubik ranking, all those criterias onto the IGA for it to go into the bylaws?
No, we wouldn't want to do that necessarily. So just for everybody, for clarification, what Counselor Dante is referring to is CSAC themselves came up with a rubric that they were able to use. They came up with and voted on the rubric and how they did that. That has been shared out to the city council members. I would not advise that we go that specific into detail in the IGA. The IGA is intended to be a much larger governing document that allows then CSAC members to work within the confines. It essentially creates guardrails that they work within. Whereas the rubric would be something much more specific to what they're creating based on the overarching rules that is contained within the IGA.
Right. Okay, so I read through all those criterias. 3 points, 2 points, 1 point. 1 point didn't make sense because it was basically saying that they didn't qualify, but they still got 1 point. But if you don't have specific criteria other than basic like this, then they don't have to abide by any criteria other than what's in here, correct?
Correct. Whatever's in here and then what would be in the bylaws as well, but the bylaws should mirror and reflect what's in here.
Okay. So, the one last thing I have to say is that in the, presentation I was given last time, there was a piece in there that said that they are not able to apply if it's for religious or political items. So, but then as I'm reading other parts of it, it's only for religious. So shouldn't we add political in there?
So I'm happy to take a look at that, but religious organizations are able to apply so long as they're helping everyone and not just assisting, folks that are contained within that specific religion.
Right, I understand that, but if it's actually religious based, they can't. Correct? If it's religious based or political based, they're not able to apply, correct?
Based on the way the IGA is written right now, if the religious-based organizations can apply, so long as they're not only, assisting folks within their client base or their religion base.
Okay, can we agree that if they are supplying religion or politics, they're not allowed to apply? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, the chair will recognize one last question from Counselor Gomez, and then we'll move forward with our agenda.
Yeah, we may have gone through this some other time, but I just want to clarify, are there any discussions revolving around self-sustainability or self-sufficiency targets for nonprofits after a specific amount of time receiving funds from CSAC? Is there any discussions that you've had?
Yeah, the majority of the discussions actually surrounded that last year when we had these work sessions. And out of that were the priorities, the 4 priorities that you have on the Exhibit A to the CSAC IGA.
Okay, I'm just concerned because I'm wondering, we have some pretty vital nonprofits that could probably be acting as a soft city department, if you will, or a county. Have they brought anything to you where they'd like to see where they can get more self-sustainability or self-sufficiency goals, whether it's for the grant writing, whether it's for having a bake sale, whatever it is? Are they helping themselves in your mind?
I guess I'm not sure how to answer that question. I think we have a lot of great nonprofits that do a lot of great work throughout the community.
Okay. Are we moving towards any, are we saying they can be on the nonprofit rolls for 3 years, 5 years? Is it going to, we're going to cap it at 4 years? Is there any discussions about those time limits is what I'm concerned about?
There were discussions about that, and that's where those prioritizations came from. So we want to prioritize those that have never received it, first-time applicants, and those that didn't receive it the year prior. So what that does is it effectively addresses what you're referring to, but doesn't put hard and fast, no, you cannot. You know, if that's something that this council wants to revisit again, then we absolutely can.
So it hasn't been prioritized yet. You say you want to prioritize. It hasn't been prioritized yet, correct?
Correct.
And do you see when that might be prioritized? What time element are we talking about?
Well, hopefully it's put back on the agenda on Monday. It sounds
Okay.
like we are moving that way. And then it would be on final reading on the 23rd, I think. No, Monday is the 23rd, April 13th. And so
Okay.
as of that point, those priorities would be in effect. And for the next round of funding, which will be 2027 funding, those would be the guidelines that CSAC would follow.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. I just want to take a minute to say I appreciate everybody involved in this conversation for recognizing the importance of this topic and problem solving and finding a way to move forward. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, folks. The chair will now move forward with today's agenda.
Madam Chair.
The chair will recognize Mayor Graham for an update on the mission. Chair will recognize
Potty break.
Mayor Graham for 15 minutes.
He's working.
Oh.
She's a stickler on her time.
Is it? Oh.
Welcome to the shelter. This is our administration area. Phone calls, mail, clothing donation. This is where we keep our clothing supplies. So we have shirts, pants, socks and underwears that we hand out. This is our general day hall. So they have dinner here at 5. During the day, they sit here, relax, work on things. We do have a full kitchen. We do about 40 to 60 meals outside every day at 4:30. Then we serve the residents inside the seating area here. This is our male dorm. So we have room for 29 males on the bottom bunk. We have nice lockers that were donated from Planet Fitness, a great upgrade for us. We have a full bathroom with handicap stalls and showers. This is the female side. So we have a small day hall for the females, of course, with more donation clothes here for ladies. You have the snack totes. This is our female dorm area. We have room for 12 females right at this point on bottom bunks. We have a laundry system with industrial dryer and 2 washing machines, food pantry and storage area to the rear here. Plenty of extra blankets ready.
Hi, my name is Sarah Money. I'm the manager of recovery services here. Let's go on in. Here in this space, you'll see is our group room. We offer peer support groups all throughout the week for our residents and for previous residents as well. The groups focus on things like life skills, recovery support, and how to really build community.
Welcome to the emergency shelter.
My name's Patrick Liptrap. I've been a resident here going on 2.5, maybe 3 months. Struggled with addiction off and on most of my life. I'm taking part in the resident program here at the shelter. And then I'm also taking part in Catholic Charities Works. They offer 2 different aspects. One is sobriety, daily responsibilities, taking accountability that actually helps you build skills for employment. It's like a huge community that just bands together.
My name is Vanessa Tafoya. And I've been here for 6 months. This is my 3rd time here. So, the first 2 times were rough, but this time has been way better than the last 2 times. I'm just thankful that I'm here and have a roof over my head, food to eat, a warm bed to sleep in. I mean, I am so thankful for that after being outside from like October all the way till March. It was very rough out there. So I plan on saving for a car first. That way this way I don't have to take the bus and all that stuff. I walked in with $3 and in a bag of clothes and that was it. So now I've got more than enough.
Okay, thank you, Clyde. Sorry about that mishap. I was gonna play that for you guys at the end, but you can see it firsthand. So for those of you that haven't visited the shelter in the last year, you can see a little bit better of an idea of what it looks like today, thanks to the city. Thanks to City Council for approving the funding. So a year ago, I came before you with 2 different options. One option was the city taking the shelter and running it as a city department. And the second option was the city putting an RFP out, request for proposal for somebody to fulfill the needs of the shelter in the city. So it's been about a year. So I wanted to provide an update for you and get some direction from council moving forward. So in May of 2025, City Council awarded the shelter contract to Safeside Recovery. The contract was for 12 months. And then City Council asked me to come back and we would reevaluate what's been going on after a year. So as you know, the city owns and funds the overhead of the building, including utilities, insurance, and the maintenance. The contract that was awarded is about $53,000 a month for basic operations. The shortfalls are picked up by Safeside Recovery through grants, donations, It's about $12,000 a month through philanthropic funding and grants. So what's being provided at the shelter currently? So 365 days a year, which had never previously happened. The shelter Safeside is providing a relief shelter, so it's a low barrier shelter. It's open every night at 9 p.m. Closes at 7 a.m. depending on weather. Sometimes we're open all day. Sometimes it's open earlier and stays later, really depending on weather. Safeside also provides a program where they have a structured residence program and a pathway to stability. So that's in the 728 building, the 710 building, the Horseshoe building is where the emergency sheltering takes place. And every night at 4:30, they serve a warm meal to anywhere from 80 to 100 individuals. Safeside had applied for some grants through the year, and they have received monies to do bed bug remediation. They've bought new bunk beds for the shelter. They have put new security cameras in. They've installed swipe card access system. They've improved staff training and wages and employee health insurance. So this is their program growth from December of 2024. If you'll recall, they were a tenant in the shelter before they became the operator. So you can see a 100% increase in emergency shelter because previously we only sheltered when previous administration would call for those emergency declarations, which would be if it got below 20 degrees. It wasn't every single night. Previous city council authorized this entire space as S1, which is government zoning, which allows the shelter now to shelter individuals every single night of the year without having to call an emergency declaration. We had 22 clients per night. We now have about 55 clients in our emergency shelter, and they've increased their outreach meals from 42 to 80. Some of these pictures below are the pantry at the shelter. We go in and we remove the beds and clean the emergency shelter and put, Safeside did buy new beds, so they have better beds than those rinky-dink blue things. And then the building in the middle, that's one of our tenant spaces. That's where the Public Community Health Center is, and they provide primary care 1 day a week. These are some of their numbers that they provided to the city about resident outcomes since December of 2024. They've moved 32 clients to Next Step Housing. 25 of the clients are currently receiving counseling. About 10 clients are employed a month. 6 are in training at PCC. 3 have moved to sober living. 3 have moved to a skilled nursing facility. 2 are working on their GED. 2 are becoming peer coaches, and 1 joined the Marine Corps. You can also see some additional wraparound services that we've been able to provide at the shelter. So Public Community Health Center, New Leaf Counseling is there, Catholic Charities, Care and Share. So the previous operators of the shelter had lost their Care and Share, so we weren't able to receive food on site. Safeside came in and they did a really good job in order to get their food distribution back. They do peer coaching. They have monthly legal support there, dental treatment, and a dream lab. City Council approved an MOU last Monday with the Public Community Health Clinic. So since July of 2025, every Thursday from 1 to 4 o'clock, we have doctors on site where they do behavioral, mat care, primary care. Since July of 2025, they've served 165 patients. They've had 229 visits. Their fill rate is 84%. 90 out of those 165, 95 of them are shelter clients. 28 of the individuals currently live on the street. 48 have a mental health crisis diagnosis, and 15 have a substance abuse diagnosis. And these are, like I said, the City Council just approved the MOU for expanded services last Monday. And being able to provide this clinic on site, we can really see a cost savings when it comes to calls for service because we have somebody on site at the shelter. Coming in 2026, I'm sure you've seen this picture. We have it outside of the shelter. This is 8 congregate housings shelters. Included in this is going to be a fence that would secure the entire facility, so you'd only have one entrance. We've also talked about putting a pet kennel facility there, so unhoused individuals that have animals with them will be able to store their animals on site. An intensive outpatient program and a sober living program. Outside of the dollars that the city provides to the shelter, you can see that these are some of the grants that they've received from Colorado Trust. In addition to their shelter donations that they receive monthly. It's called the Pueblo Shelter 1000. I don't know if any of you have seen it, where you can sign up to be a monthly donor. So in total, they've been able to receive $63,000 in donations, which is the gap funding to the monies that the city provides on a monthly basis. So I'm here tonight because the 12 months ends in May. So I wanted to come to City Council and provide you with an update of what's happened over the last year. And see if we can continue to fund this contract for 2026. So in the 2026 budget, $266,000 was allocated for 5 months out of the 12 months. The first 7 months was allocated in 2025's budget. That contract does expire in May, so we will have to get into a new contract with SafeSide and be able to pay the 7 months out of 2026's budget that were not allocated in the 2026 approved budget. So tonight in front of you, I have a proposal of what it would look like if City Council agrees and how this funding would come. So the city received home ARP dollars, which came through the American Rescue Plan Act. So they have to be used specifically for homelessness, individuals on their way to homelessness, homeless veterans, those types of individuals. And so CDBG has, CSAC proposed $110,000 of the CDBG funds for 2026's recommendation. I'm asking City Council to consider another $100,000 out of that funding, $145,000 out of the ARPA interest, and you can see the balance as of February 28th was $172,000. That account gets interest on it every single month, and then $100,000 out of general fund, and this would be able to continue to fund the shelter operations from June through December, 7 months out of the 12-month contract. And happy to answer your questions if you have them.
The chair will recognize Councilor Latino.
Yes. The coming in 2026, we saw the pictures there of the facilities, the housing facilities. I think it's a great idea. And I would like to see us work a little more closely with United Way and with Catholic Charities, because they've got the program that we brought forward last year. They've got city dollars to do some things with the homeless, and I think they've done some really good work with the homeless population and getting them to work.
They do have an office space where they take office hours at the shelter currently, Councilor.
Catholic Charities does?
They do.
Good. Thank you.
That specific program that you're talking
Yes.
about is located at the shelter.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good thing. It's a great move forward to getting these folks off the street and giving them a sense of self-worth. And so, and then I also like your proposal about the facilities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselors, any other questions? Oh, to Chair recognize Counselor Dante?
On the 100,000 that's coming from the general fund, are there any grants that have been put up to substitute for that money that's coming from the general fund?
As in the city putting out
Yes.
any grants, the city has not put out any grants for operation dollars specifically to subsidize that 100,000.
Great. Any other questions, counselors? The chair will recognize Counselor Hernandez.
Mayor, thank you. The 455,000 needed to funding for this year, does that include the 8 non-congregate shelters?
It does. So that number is about $65,000 a month. So you currently fund 52,000. That additional 13,000 would be to run the congregate shelters. The pet area, once built, I don't have a timeline on when that will be up and running, but that money is built into this 455,000 and would be on a reimbursable basis as the 8 congregate shelters come on board and as the pet facility comes on board. Because I don't have a timeline within the 7 months of when it would be. So this money would sit in a capital account. If those shelters didn't come up till 2027, that money would still be set aside, that extra $13,000 a month.
So the 455 is funding both the current facility and the new one?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
We have time to field one more question from Counselor Latino.
Yes, thank you. Just a thought. We had a presentation here this evening from United Way. And I mean, they're here, obviously, the Shanna and Michael, are they working with us to help with this program?
I'll tell you, Counselor, that United Way, when the shelter went under about 1.5 years ago, when the operators could not continue to fulfill the mission, it was United Way who kind of gathered everybody together to see if there was any other nonprofit, if the city and the county wanted to step in. And so they were really the facilitators of being able to allow the city to come in and take over. And I think that, Shanna, you were the fiduciary agent for a period of time for people who wanted to continue to make donations to the shelter before the city took it over.
So basically they're working with us as a team.
We did work with them previously. I'm not sure if they work hand in hand with SafeSide still to this day, but they did work with the city when that transition happened about 1.5 years ago.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Yep.
We have time for just one more question and then we'll have to move forward. Counselor Dante, I'll recognize you.
Okay, so once you get all the construction done and it's in place, do you have any future steps that you're going to take it once that's done?
So as far as the 8 units, those would be more like transitional housing. So individuals would start in the relief shelter, hopefully build their way to the residence program. And we have people that are there a couple weeks to a couple months. And then I think SafeSide's goal would be then that be kind of the last step until individuals are ready to move out. They would be in and they would have a more transitioned 4 walls to themselves before they go and get an apartment or a household. So I would say that it would be the last step before they're transitioned into being on their own.
Okay, is
SafeSide.
Are they thinking about getting another building to expand in?
I don't know if they're necessarily thinking about it on the footprint that we currently have, the space,
Another location.
is pretty, they are, so they have shown some interest, on Northern Avenue, in the Bessemer area, putting a second location, to provide services on that side of town as well.
Good, good. Now it's for, all the, people that are getting issued summons for loitering on sidewalks, sitting on sidewalks, whatever. Being on Fountain Creek, that area. Is there something that the city is thinking about doing to give them a location to be rather than being where they're not supposed to be?
So this would be that location. So the whole area would be fenced. I don't know if you've visited the shelter in Colorado Springs. If not, I highly encourage. It's one entrance point, and individuals can kind of go and hang out there for the day. There's turf, there's picnic tables. They have outdoor locker space where individuals can store their belongings. And so that's really what we're trying to make the area between 710 and 28, one large area where people would be kind of free to roam all day. And so that's kind of the other reason why they would need the extra funding per month. Once that happens, they would need more staff and more security to be able to keep eyes on the whole space. So that truly is the goal. Instead of having people hanging out in downtown or on Fountain Creek, that they would have a location that they could go to, that was safe, and that services would be provided there 24/7.
Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you very much. That's very helpful.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor Graham, thank you, Mayor Graham, for the update. We'll now move forward with the council agenda. The chair will recognize President Aliff for the proposed ordinance for suspension of kennel and cattery regulations in extreme weather. President Aliff, the chair will recognize you for 15 minutes.
Thank you. Obviously, it won't take that long because I talk pretty fast. Through first reading last week, I brought forward the ordinance that asks for the suspension of the kennel and cattery regulations in extreme weather. I think all of you know my affinity for the animals and the people that own the animals, and that's very important to me. Back before, it's interesting, the presentation on the shelter and back before the shelter. And when we had emergency shelters, the mayor would declare an emergency, and that went on even when Mayor Graham came on. But it was a regular occurrence when temperatures dropped to a certain degree or got too hot. The mayor had the ability to adopt an emergency ordinance which suspended many of the rules that necessitated how people could live in a congregate setting. This ordinance is pretty much the same ordinance, but it pertains to pets. And what I'm asking for is for us to give the mayor authority under extreme weather events to declare an emergency, to suspend, obviously, as the ordinance says, kennel and cattery regulations. Now, why is that important? There are several rescue organizations within the city of Pueblo that are very interested in helping out during these events. And because of their licenses and what their requirements are, it bars them or it hinders their ability to really pitch in and jump in and because they don't want to jeopardize their licenses as a kennel, their cattery or kennel license. Another example would be, let's say a few weeks ago when we had the brutal cold and the snow, and there's one rescue organization that has a bus that has been converted into a kennel. So this bus could literally go to the shelter, for example. break down the barrier of the people who don't want to go to a shelter because they have pets, and they'll just sit there and fight the extreme cold because they don't want to be separated from their pet. Could you imagine if we had the ability to put their pet 50 feet from them in a bus, and they'd be taken care of? And many of these organizations obviously would provide people to man the bus. There's no expense to the city, which is the greatest thing. I mean, that's the main reason I brought this forward, right? Is because there's no expense to the city to do this. But they have the expertise to take care of the animals, to feed, water, walk, whatever it takes. And I think that it truly does break down that barrier of why people in certain instances refuse to go into a shelter. And if we can do anything to help that, then we should be on board with that, in my opinion. It not only helps the animal, but it helps the humans who own the animals and gets them out of the cold also, because they're not worried about their pet. If this goes through before anything ever happens, obviously the rescue organizations that want to be a part of this would come present to city council and tell you exactly what they're prepared to do in case of an emergency. The wording of the emergency literally opens up the entire city. Churches, businesses, anybody could take in 5, 6, 7, 8 dogs if that's what they wanted to do. If they were in a place to do that, they could do that. And they would not be subject to the kennel licensing of the city of Pueblo. So it just takes care of, I don't think that it should be controversial at all. I think that this is literally all of being a human, is to break down those barriers, and taking care of the least of us is our biggest responsibility. And this goes a small way of doing that, just a small way. So I hope I didn't want you to go into second reading without knowing anything about it. I wanted to make sure that I laid it out there. And if you had any questions that I could answer, I would answer, and obviously hope for your support come next Monday. And that concludes my report. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, let's see. Anybody, counselors, questions? Sure, I'll recognize Counselor Latino.
I don't really have any questions. I just echo a little bit of what Councilman Aliff alluded to, because we had a situation take place this past Saturday on the east side of City Church, where we had the animal shelter folks come over and or from the Humane Society of Pikes Peak region, they came over and issued vaccines to the various animals in that particular area. And it was a great event. We had a lot of people show up for that. So I was very pleased with that. It really went well. And I want to thank the City Church on the east side. I want to thank Lisa Johns from the Humane Society of the Pikes Peak region. Thank you.
Right. Sure, I'll recognize Counselor Gomez.
Yeah, here we have a shelter now that's going to bring in pets, which is great. We've got this going on with President Aliff, and I think that shows the sign of a great community. I really do. It's taking care of the most vulnerable is a hallmark for this community. So I really applaud you, Mark.
Sure, I'll recognize Counselor Hernandez.
Just wanted to say the same thing. I mean, it's a wonderful thing to be able to do that for animals in those desperate times, severe times of weather. To not separate people from their animals, I think is an important part of what our community should be thinking about doing. So thank you.
I know that working in mental health, folks who are in these situations base their motivations for behavior on relationships. And sometimes when you don't have anybody but your pets, that's what your motivation is. And so I feel like this is a great move for our community. And President Aliff, I want to thank you for your leadership in making this move forward for our community to start to fill in those gaps to support our community and recognizing that particular need. Thank you. All right. Great. Okay, the council will move forward with our agenda. The chair will recognize Harley Gifford, Deputy City Attorney. He'll go over open meeting laws for us. Mr. Gifford, the chair will recognize you for 10 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of council. I may need just a couple extra minutes if I talk slow or if you have questions. So I've been asked to take a few minutes to discuss a law that affects every one of you every time you pick up your phone or you log into your email, and that is the Colorado Open Meetings Law, sometimes called the Sunshine Law. While it's not a complicated statute, it is one that local governing bodies routinely stumble on, often without realizing it. For example, my goal today is to give you practical understanding of what the law requires, how council members typically get into trouble, specific rules around email and electronic communication, and hopefully never having the city of Pueblo be listed on one of these headlines. So the Colorado legislature declared, and I'm quoting directly from statute here, that the formation of public policy is public business and may not be conducted in secret. That is the entire philosophical foundation of this law. Public trust in government depends on the public being able to watch government work, and the open meetings law in Colorado enforces that principle. There are three immediate concrete consequences when open meetings law, OML, is violated, and they're displayed on the slide. The first action, any action taken in violation of OML is legally void. If you somehow violate open meetings law and make a decision, vote on something, the vote doesn't count, the ordinance does not stand. Second, in the event that a concerned citizen brings this matter to the courts, attorney's fees are awarded to the prevailing citizen who brings the lawsuit. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's a shall statement in the ordinance, and the courts has no discretion to deny them. Third, any citizen in Colorado has standings to sue. You don't have to be a resident of Pueblo. You don't even have to attend Pueblo City Council meetings. You could, for example, live in Pueblo and file an open meetings law violation against the city of Rifle or Fort Collins. You don't even have to attend their meetings. So, does it apply to city council? Yes, obviously we all know that. But it should be noted that it applies across the board. OML applies to any local public body, which includes any policymaking or formally constituted body of any political subdivision of the state. What that means is, in addition to city council, county commissioners, all of council's committees and subcommittees, as well as advisory boards, in which council delegates decision-making functions to, are included as well. So your homeless commission, your appeals boards, your advisory commissions, they are all bound by the same open meetings law requirements as city council. So what is a meeting? That's where most violations begin, is a misunderstanding of what the law considers to be a meeting. The statute defines any meeting as any kind of gathering convened to discuss public business in person, by telephone, electronically, or by other means of communication. This definition does not require a formal setting, a gavel, a flag, chambers. All it requires as a threshold for a public meeting is when there are 3 members present and discussion by council members of any matter related to council's policymaking or legislative function. Formal action is not required to trigger the law. However, there are things that do not qualify as meetings. For example, a chance encounter or social gathering where public business is not the central purpose of that meeting. When you go to the police banquet or you go to a United Way banquet, you're not there to discuss public business. However, once there, if you decide to start talking about public business, you could be in violation of the open meetings law. Other examples that are not violations is an authorized executive session conducted under proper procedures and policy discussions with those who are not members of council. Policy discussions with the mayor, with staff, with constituents, those do not qualify as violations of open meeting law. So once we've established that a meeting has taken place, OML has 3 requirements which attach. Number 1 is all meetings must be open to the public. All qualifying meetings must be open to any member of the public at all times. So this means there can be no member-only workshops, no council-only behind doors meetings, no policy retreats, no discussions with the door closed unless properly convened under an executive session. Requirement 2, full and timely notice. Statute requires a publicly posted notice at least 24 hours in advance, including agenda information when possible. Council really doesn't have to worry about this one for our Monday meetings. Our agenda is posted on Fridays. However, if there was ever a need for a special meeting, something that urgently came up on a Thursday, it would require that 24 hours of notice and agenda items as specific as possible. One of the headlines that you saw earlier was Woodland Park. What they had chose to do was on their agenda put housekeeping business. And under housekeeping business, delved into really important policy decisions and made those decisions. That was found by courts to be a violation of the open meetings law because they did not properly notice the public. And requirement 3, minutes recorded. Any meeting at which a formal action occurs or could occur must have minutes taken, recorded properly, and made available for public inspection. So keep in mind that these requirements apply to all qualifying meetings. Any violation, even unintentional, is considered a violation. So what are the 6 ways? I'm sure there's more, but these are the 6 most common violation patterns we see with elected officials. Reply all email chains. We'll I have a full slide on this one later, so we'll talk about it then. Serial conversations, also called a walking quorum or a daisy chain meeting. This is where one member goes and individually talks to everybody, builds a consensus, has the discussion, so that all of the policy discussion matters have already taken place in the dark. And when you come to the meeting, it's just a simple vote. There's no discussion. Social events where policy gets discussed. Remember our example earlier of attending a banquet. You may not be attending the banquet to discuss public policy, but once you're there, someone says, hey, I got this idea for a policy, and you discuss it and you say why you don't like it, and somebody else gets involved. That's clearly a open meetings violation. The best practice, the best practical note for that is if somebody says, hey, I got this great idea, the other council member should say, great, let's put it on the agenda, and cease the conversation right there. Group text, WhatsApp, Teams messaging. I'm sure you all have a city council group chat going. I hope not. Good. That would also violate open meetings law. Inadequate notice, like we discussed earlier, calling a meeting without the 24 hours notice or failing to properly identify items on the agenda. And an improper executive session. So if we fail to follow the procedural checklist, like we always do, which is a 2/3 vote, quorum, etc. Of all these issues, email and text issues, texting seems to be the most common occurrence. Which brings us to the reply all problem. The single most practical takeaway I want us to state that, again, quoting directly from the statute, that if elected officials, quote, exchange electronic mail to discuss pending legislation or other businesses among themselves, the electronic mail is subject to the requirements of this section, which means that if a meeting took place, it's considered on an electronic email chain. We then need to create minutes of that meeting. So your emails will be the minutes of that meeting. That is how we will comply with open meetings law. So if it comes to our attention that a conversation like this did take place, we will then notice that meeting and produce the minutes, which is your emails for that meeting. The statute does carve out narrow exceptions for emails that do not constitute a meeting. On the slide, these include scheduling and availability of emails. That's when Katie reaches out to each of you, says, when are you available for such and such? Forwarding information without comment. Oftentimes, council members do this for staff or for the mayor. You'll send an email that says for information notice only or for legislative purposes, and you leave it at that. And it's a proposed ordinance or a discussion matter that you would like to discuss later on. Forwarding to a constituent and copying other members for information purposes. Again, there's no discussion. It's just a forwarded email and you're including your fellow council members on that email. and asking logistical or procedural questions for later public discussion. Send an email to me, copy all the other counselors. Hey, Harley, I want to bring this ordinance forward. How should I do it? That's not a violation of the open meetings law. Everything else, any exchange of views on the substance of a public matter is a meeting. The statute does define what it means by merits or substance, and it means any discussion, debate, exchange of ideas related to the essence of any public policy or proposition. It's very broad standard, encompasses lots of things. So practically, what I would suggest is don't reply all. And I know that on your iPads and your phones, it's difficult. If you hit reply, it sometimes will reply all. I would encourage you to, there's 3 dots on the upper right-hand corner. I think Council Member Dante told me about this. Lower right-hand side, you hit those 3 dots and then reply, not reply all. Also, perfect. So if you have any questions, your resident expert, Councilmember Dante. Also, staff tries to eliminate any potential reply all scenario happening by blind carbon copying. You'll see that oftentimes where I'll send an email, Mr. President and members via BCC. So we're doing our part as well to try to keep these accidental meetings from happening. So here's a real world scenario, how an innocent email can become a problem. So we have step 1. The mayor sends out to council an email that says, here's the information requested by council for Monday's meeting. And it's a copy of a proposed development agreement for Monday. Step 1, still fine. Step 2, member A hits reply all or mistakenly replies all, doesn't have to be intentional. Quote, I reviewed it and I have concerns about the environmental section. So we've identified a problem. We've replied all, we're talking about the merits and substance of this policy matter. Step 3, as now member B replies, hey, I agree. We really need to ask for a revised report. Now we're in an open meetings violation, clearly. Step 4, member C replies with the opposite view. Now we're in a full-on debate. We're doing exactly what open meetings law doesn't want us to do. We are discussing matters outside of the public venue, in the dark, so to speak, not in the sunshine. So what has actually happened here? The real debate has already happened. It hasn't happened on the dais at a council meeting, which is exactly what we're wanting to avoid with the open meetings law. Really quick, executive sessions. You guys go into executive sessions all the time. I'm sure it's routine. Probably we don't give much thought to it. Staff provides a script. We read the script, we go through it. But I want you to know that executive sessions are carve-outs of the open meetings law, and there are specific requirements for how we get into executive session. I would encourage you to read these if you have any questions, or the next time we're going into executive session, if you want a better understanding of, hey, why do we have to vote to go into executive session? Why does it have to be 2/3? Why do we have to come back out of executive session and end the meeting? Those are all valid questions that I'd be happy to discuss with you. The permitted topics are listed on the right side of the slide. The most common that you'll see from counsel, attorney-client legal advice, property transactions, personal matters, and negotiation strategies. I think we may even have one of those on for after this meeting. Consequences of violating the open meetings law. So I touched this earlier, but I want to be precise about legal exposure here. First, any action taken at an OML violating meeting is void. Not voidable, but void. OML specifically states that no resolution, rule, regulation, ordinance, or formal action shall be valid unless taken at a meeting that meets the requirements of OML, period. So what this means is that, remember our hypothetical earlier about the email chains. If council were to have come out to a regular meeting and then voted on that development agreement or whatever it was, without going through the entire discussion again, that would be a violation of the open meetings law. That ordinance would be void. Second, if staff or council members do not catch this and a citizen sues, again, like I discussed earlier, automatic attorney's fees. That's coming out of the city coffers to pay for this person to tell us that we did something wrong. The only time the city can recover its attorney's fees is if the citizen bringing the lawsuit is frivolous, vexatious, or groundless, which is a high bar that rarely, if ever, applies. And like I said earlier, the threshold is very low. essentially anybody can file a violation for O&L. Practical rules to keep you safe. Here are the 6 things that, when followed, should keep us out of trouble. Rule number 1, when in doubt, bring it to the dais. If you want to discuss something in public, put it on the agenda. That's what our meetings are for. I know sometimes they get long and we tend to go through things, but that's really the time where your job is accomplished. Rule 2, no email chain, don't reply all to emails. Okay, I think that one's pretty clear at this point. 3, don't have a private group text message. Rule 4, if there is a chance meeting, this does not give you the green light to accidentally bump into somebody and say, hey, you know what? Let's talk about my emergency kennel and cattery ordinance. For example, executive sessions have a checklist. If you ever have questions regarding that checklist, please let me know. And number 6, when you receive a substantive group email, reply only to the sender. Even if you have to create a new email to reply just to that sender. I would say don't reply at all and wait for the next council meeting. So bottom line, the public has a right to watch you do your job. Open meetings law is the mechanism that guarantees that. The law does not require you to make good decisions just to be transparent in your decision making. It requires that deliberation happen in public. One thing I would recommend to council and to the clerk is that we do have a provision in Appendix A, which allows for these types of discussions to occur. It's in Rule 15.1A14, which is council policy matters. That has not really been included on agendas in my experience. I think that's something that possibly could, if council wants to, include that on future agendas so that your policy discussions can take place, not just under council commentary where here's what I want to do, and then the next person gets to talk and there's no debate going back and forth. I think council policy matters would allow for this debate to take place so that there's no longer, or there's no miscommunication between a council member who wants an ordinance and directing staff. You can have that full discussion. We can get consensus right here in the open as we're supposed to. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Gifford. Counselors, any questions?
It was so good. I just, everybody now understands. Perfect.
We all
If I
get
have-
open
If I
meetings.
have questions, I'll come to you then. Thank you. Councilor Dante.
Looks like there's a question, Counselor. Chair will recognize Counselor Dante.
On this council policy matters. That sounds like a work session thing. Would it be on the work session or the regular meeting?
It's possible. You could have these on work sessions. We've done several tonight that are work sessions, but we could also, rather than saying, well, we can only discuss this 2 times a month. I would encourage you to have that policy matters included on the agenda so that we can discuss it every time council gets together for any sort of meeting.
Okay. And just for everybody's information on how I work is that I am not being rude when I don't reply. Thank you. I'm trying to stay off of reply all. So just know that.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Seeing none, we'll move forward with council's agenda. Up next on council's agenda, it is to move into executive session. I would like to entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to go into executive session for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and or instructing negotiators under CRS section 24-6-402, parent 4, parent E, parent I. And the following additional details are provided for identification purposes to discuss a potential economic development project, Project Falcon.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The council will now move into executive session. The time is now 8:30 PM on March 16th, 2026, and the chair will now adjourn this work session.